Yeah, thank you so much. I was telling Insitar, this is a strange opening for me because I wanted to exhibit here from the time that I moved to Portland in 2011. I would go to every show, I would walk by every day on the way to work, and I would be like, one day I'm gonna have my work in the Blue Sky Gallery, and now it's here. And so I guess I need another goal. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do next. So really appreciative to be on these walls, and I'm very appreciative of all of you coming here today. This has been such a strange and long journey. I'll tell you a little bit about my background and how this work came about. I say this a lot, so if you've heard me before, I'll keep it brief. But you know, it's very personal, and it's a big reveal of my identity and a transformation of my upbringing. This work. So I grew up in Kansas City, Kansas, and we grew up in this place that was urban and country at the same time. It was, the front of our house was what you would expect in any major city. There was crime, you know, we would literally run around in the sewers because we would get in trouble and we would go in the sewers and come out in another part of the town to get away from whatever we had gotten into. There was all kinds of craziness going on in the front of the house. But in the back of the house, everybody on our block had bought the land behind their house so they wouldn't build public housing back there. And so there was just in the middle of Kansas City, this open green field that was 5 acres. And so my sister Carissa and I would play back there all summer. We would catch fireflies, we would pick blackberries, we would climb trees. There was a man named Mr. Wills down the street that raised cows. There were people that raised fighting dogs back there, chickens. And I never really thought much about it. You know, I grew up and I started to look at what I was gonna do with my life, and I could go be a pastor at my uncle's church, which I didn't wanna do. Or I could be like a truck driver for UPS if I worked really hard in the warehouse and worked my way up to that. And I was just like, I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to work my way up from the warehouse to a truck driver at UPS. That is not a goal that I want to set for myself. I wanted to be an artist and a photographer and a designer. You know, that was what was appealing to me, but I had no clue how to make that happen. I worked at Blockbuster Video all summer long after I graduated high school, and best job I've ever had. I love that job. I would go back today. I would work at Blockbuster for free. It was incredible. But I saved up $500 and I moved to New York City. I just said, Kansas City isn't working for me. I don't have a lot of opportunity here. I don't really feel like I fit in here. I'm gonna go to New York City, and I moved there. That $500 was gone in a week. I spent most of it on subway fare and like toilet paper, and I really struggled for a while I was there. I did a little bit of acting. I did some children's theater. I played a hippo for like 2 years in a children's show. And when I was in town, I would sing in the park, I would play guitar. And I was doing websites for my friends because I knew a little bit about coding and I knew a little bit about design. And all my friends that were actors, I would make their portfolios. And I took all that portfolio work, I went into an agency one day and I said, I would like a job. And they said, okay. And I got a job as a junior designer and a photographer at this ad agency. It was a miracle. And I didn't know anything that anybody was talking about. So as they were in meetings, I would just Google everything that anybody said. I would say ROI, SEO, and learn as I was going. And then I actually, by doing that, got pretty good at my job. And I got promoted. I went from junior designer to designer, and then I got promoted again. I went from designer to senior designer. I went from senior designer to art director. And then I applied for a job in Portland, and I came out here as a creative director. The thing is that every time that I got promoted, there were like fewer and fewer black people. When I got that job as creative director, I was working at an agency, there were 200 people, and I was the only black person in the entire office. And I was in Portland, and I was over here. This was like 2012. I lived up the road at the Honeyman Hardware Lofts, and I think it was a month when I moved here before I saw another black person. I didn't know where they were. So I, at work, had this sense of imposter syndrome. I felt like I didn't belong in the spaces that I was in. I felt like I wasn't a culture fit. Like, I understood their culture. I was wearing chinos. I was, listening to Animal Collective, which I hated, but I was like, I would just like play it. I was like, yeah, Modest Mouse is great. I hated the music. But like, they didn't know who Luther Vandross was at all. They had never, stayed up to watch Showtime at the Apollo. Like, so there was just this delta between their culture and my culture that I came from. And I felt like I was gonna get fired. I felt like I was gonna be thrown out on the street and forced to move back to Kansas, which was the last thing that I wanted to do. I was at a party, I was at a birthday party, and I didn't know anybody there except for the person whose birthday it was. And so I was drinking a lot by myself, kind of sulking in the corner. And somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and there was a black man. I got up, I gave him a hug. I said, there you are. I said, oh my goodness, you can't imagine what it's been like. We started chopping it up, and he said his name was Charles Perry, and he was a filmmaker. I said, I'm a photographer. What are you working on? He said, I'm working on a movie about black cowboys. And I said, what, like a Western? He said, no, like a documentary. And I said, well, how do you make a documentary about something that's not real? I hadn't known a thing about cowboys. Like, I'd grown up watching Westerns. We would watch Bonanza, we would watch Gunsmoke. One of my favorite movies was Tombstone. Doc Holliday in that movie says, I'm your Huckleberry. And I would say that all the time when I was a kid, before I was about to get into some stuff. And, but like everybody in that movie is white. Like every extra, I don't even think there's a black horse in that movie. Like it's super, super white. But, we would go to the rodeo in Kansas City. We would go to the American Royal, and we would sing the national anthem. My choir would, and we would come in, we would sing the national anthem, and then we would leave. And so, like, to me, like, the only black cowboys that I'd seen represented in media were Sheriff Bart in Blazing Saddles and Cowboy Curtis on Pee-wee's Playhouse. So we kept talking. He said, hey, why don't you come with me to a rodeo this summer in Okmulgee, Oklahoma? And I said, absolutely. It was exactly what I was looking for, to be immersed in black culture, to be far away from a computer, and to take photos of something new was really appealing to me. So I bought my ticket, I went there, and it was 105 degrees, 100% humidity there. There were glistening white horse trailers all over the lawn. There was barbecue smoke haze. There was R&B, gospel, and hip hop mingling in the air. And there were thousands of black cowboys everywhere. They were doing the Cupid shuffle in their boots in the dirt, kicking up dust. And there were young men riding around. It was so hot, they were riding around with no shirt on. And they had gold chains. Some of them were riding around in Jordans and basketball shorts on their horses. Some of the older men were dressed, kind of like I am. They had their pinky rings, they had on their gold, their jewelry. Hat was nice, shirts were so starched they crunch when they move their arms. The women were riding 50 miles an hour in the arena doing the barrels, and their braids were blowing behind them as they rode, and they were clutching the reins with long acrylic nails. Everything was bedazzled. They were just sparkling in the light. I met a man named Robert Criff, and he offered me a bottled water. I desperately needed it. I couldn't have fit in any less. I was wearing chinos from work, and I had on a wrinkled linen shirt, and then I was wearing wingtips with no socks. And I sweat through my shirt. My shirt was see-through. And he said, "You need a bottle of water?" I said, "Yes, Robert, I obviously need a bottle of water." And he shook my hand, and his hands were 12 grit sandpaper, and my hands are dragonfly wings from working in tech, and moisturizing frequently. And he had on a Kansas City Royals hat. So I said, "Where are you from, Robert?" He said, "I'm from Kansas City." I said, "Oh, I'm from Kansas City. Missouri or Kansas?" That's the first question you asked. He said, "I'm from Kansas." I said, "Okay, the right Kansas City." And I said, "Where about?" He said, "I live off of 58th in Georgia. The 5-acre field, my house, is on 57th in Georgia." Turns out that he lived on the other side of the 5-acre field where me and my sister used to play. There's a lot of details as to why I didn't go to the other side of that field. But I had never seen horses back there. I'd never seen Robert. But he knew who my grandma was. He knew who my mom was. We went to the same high school. He knew who my pastor was. I felt embarrassed that I didn't know anything about this culture. And I felt kind of ripped off because I was in the front yard running through the sewers when if I would have just gone a little bit further, I could have been hanging out with cowboys. It changed my perception of home away from a place of pain and poverty and violence to a place of independence and grit and all of this stuff that I had associated with the cowboys that I loved. At the rodeo, I photographed that thing with absolute joy. My face was sore from smiling. The rodeo started and a rider came out carrying the Pan-African flag, black, red, and green. And a singer sang "Lift Every Voice and Sing" with so much sincerity that I heard it, although I'd heard it 1,000 times, it really, really resonated with me for the first time. And I realized what they were doing at that rodeo, working the land, working with animals, was stuff that enslaved people did, but they were doing it in this space for their own entertainment and their own profit. I went home to Portland and I looked at the photos and I just was like hit with all of this vibrancy and energy. Kansas metaphor, it was like I had gone to Oz, but like come back and had proof that I had been there. I didn't think much about the photos at the time. I didn't post them. I just sort of sat on them for a while. And the next black rodeo that I heard about, I went to it because I was like, that was so fun, I gotta go back. That rodeo was completely different than the first one I went to. This one was in Phoenix, Arizona. And people were wearing teal and pink and everybody was smiling and it was just a whole different vibe. And so I was like, I gotta go to another rodeo and see what that one's like. And that one was different. So I went to dozens of rodeos over and over again and I started to make friends. I started to meet people and go deep with them. And I would end up at people's ranches. You know, somebody would be like, oh, you gotta go talk to Sticky Hayes. I was like, all right, I'll go talk to Sticky Hayes. And I went down to Houston and was in a truck with a guy named Sticky going to go sell a bull and taking photos along the way. Eventually my wife was like, what are you doing? You just keep going to rodeos and spending thousands of dollars on this? What's the plan? And so she started an Instagram and she asked me what I wanted to call it. I said, is 8 seconds available? She said no, so we called it 8 secs, which is terrible to say out loud. But we put the photos on there, and a lot of people, white folks, black folks, were like, I didn't know this existed, just like me. And so I just felt this conviction to let everybody know that this thing that I had fallen in love with, this thing that had revealed parts of my identity was real. And I kept going. And then brands started to come, Wrangler and Boot Barn and Stetson and all these heritage Western brands. This was right around when George Floyd got murdered. They started coming to me and they were like, Ivan, we've never posted a picture of a black person before. Can you help us? I was like, absolutely, for $10,000. And I started to do work on behalf of these brands and getting Cowboys paydays, which they really appreciated. But they started telling me, I've been getting $1,000, $2,000 for a photo shoot is great, but like I need to pay for horse trailer feed, rodeo fees. Like, why aren't these brands sponsoring us like they sponsor white athletes? And so I started to get some of these athletes in conversations with the brands, and we ended up getting 4 athletes so far sponsored, which is huge. It's really pivotally important to start to level up them to rodeos like the Pendleton Roundup and big rodeos around the country. That guy right there on the red shoots is Ouncy Mitchell. And Ouncy Mitchell is a bull rider. I met him at a Stetson shoot, and we just instantly became friends. We were just like buddies. And every time I went down to Houston, we would go get crawfish, we would go to the turkey leg hut, we would just cruise around in the car. And he really, really wanted to be a world champion. And he was just sort of rodeoing and staying in his car as he went from city to city. And then when he could stay in somebody's house, he would go stay at their house. And he ended up staying with the wrong person, and they ended up shooting and killing him in 2022, September of 2022. It broke my heart. And that was the moment that I realized that this wasn't a photo project. I had really become a part of this culture, and I felt a big conviction to do something about it. And so I started a rodeo. I said, I'm gonna make it so that these guys have a much easier time getting down the road. Black rodeos are usually pretty amateur, and they only pay like $10,000, $15,000 across 9 events. I was like, I'm gonna put down $60,000 in prize money, and I'm only gonna do 5 events. And I'm gonna pay the women and the men the same amount of money. It's $12,000 per event. And we're gonna support the athletes to get up here and compete. I thought, if we do it in Portland, it'll be the first black rodeo in the Pacific Northwest. And a lot of people like me who don't know that black cowboy culture is a part of their identity will get lit up and inspired. And that's exactly what me and my team did last year. We threw a rodeo at the Portland Expo Center. 2,500 people were there. We sold out. And it was a hell of a time. There were cowboys throwing hats into the crowd. There were people stomping on the bleachers. It was a hoot. And then this year I was like, let's do it again. And so we did it at the Coliseum, 7,200 seats, and we're sold out. But the Cowboys are thrilled to come up here. They're thrilled to get money that they don't have access to normally, and they're thrilled about the excitement of the people in Portland and the energy that they feel here. So that's most of the journey, you know. It's just extremely personal and a big gift in my life to do this work. You know, this is Abraham. He's a cowboy in Fort Worth, and this is his family's land. They own like 200 acres. And we were just driving around on the land and in an ATV, and we came into this opening with all of these longhorn steer, and he grabbed some feed and walked up and fed this thing, and I was freaked out because behind me are 20 of these things, and they're all coming up to the feed. Yeah, they're like coming in. They're really nice. They're like big dogs, except for they have these things on their heads, and they had flies on their faces, so they were like moving their horns like this. But he's brave. He didn't care. He's just doing his thing. That's Margie and Maverick in this photo up here. I met her in Yukon, Oklahoma, and she was incarcerated for 5 years because she refused to testify against her boyfriend at the time. And she came out and got a little bit of land and started breeding horses. And now she's really aspiring to breed high quality racing ponies. And she just had her son Maverick there. I'm a little jealous because our kids are the same age, and he can ride a horse, and my kid can barely walk. So,
Where's the picture taken?
Yukon, Oklahoma.
Yukon, Oklahoma?
Yeah. That's McClellan right there. I met her at a rodeo. This is at the rodeo that I went. This is the first rodeo that I went to, but last year. I go every year. It's like my Hajj or something. I have to go. And Milan, I snuck up on her and took a photo. I usually engage with people. These photos that I curated are photos of people looking at me, connecting with me and the camera, because I just love that energy, and I love really meeting people and vibing with them in that way. But I had taken her photo without asking permission, and she caught me. And in the first photo that I took of her, she's clutching her purse, her shoulder is turned to me, and she's rearing back on her reins because she's uncomfortable because I'm, essentially stealing. And then I talked to her. I said, we just started talking. I asked her about her horse, and then I asked her name, and she said, "My name is Milan." And I said, "That's beautiful." And then she relaxed. And then I took another photo, and a lot better energy there. That's Judea Kirsch. She's the first black rodeo queen in Arkansas. But in this photo, she had just got done riding a bronco. She rode a ranch bronc for 4 seconds, which women don't ride broncos typically, but she's tough. She played football in high school. And you can see a little bit of dirt on her knee is the only wear that she got from riding that bronco. The next one is Edwin Bagby, if you can see that. He's a farrier, so he's out there working hard. He's sweating in the heat, shoeing horses. And his whole family rodeos. I've got pictures of all of them, and I kind of connected over time that they were related. Sometimes you can kind of look at a person's eyes and be like, "I think I have a picture of your daddy," and that was kind of the case there. Back in the back is Juwan. Juwan rides in an event, and the guy on the other side with a really, really beautifully worn hat ride in an event called Pony Express. It's a relay race on horseback. There are 16 horses in the arena, and they're riding at full speed, passing a baton between the riders. And the first one to drop the baton in a bucket in the middle of the arena wins. It's crazy, and I would love to bring it to Portland, but it's just too many horses. The one in the middle is one of the Chakota Rough Riders. They're a riding club, so they trail ride mostly, but that again is in Okmulgee, my favorite rodeo, besides my own. And they ride in the Grand Entry Parade every year. Just a little bit of fringe makes me so happy. Then the next one is Marcus Verser. He's a Bronco rider, again in Oklahoma. Really, really tough guy, really, really good at what he does. Great on social media if you want to follow him. These next two boys are ropers that I met down in Houston, Texas, and Liberty, Texas. And I love this. This just sort of indicates like how most of these cowboys dress when they're not like in an arena. They're wearing Jordan, they're wearing Nike, and I keep telling Nike they need to sponsor my rodeo, but they're not listening. Then that's Ouncy. That was in Liberty, Texas. That was the second to last time that I saw him, and I just love that he's kind of like tipping his hat, kind of saying bye a little bit. The next time I saw him was here. He flew in for the St. Paul rodeo, and he didn't have a hat. He didn't have a cowboy hat. And he called me. He said, "I need a hat, Ivan." And I was like, what kind of cowboy doesn't have a hat? That's a crazy thing. He said, "My hat got stepped on in the last rodeo that I was in." So we went all the way to Salem, because that's the only like proper Western store is the Double H. And got him a hat, got him to the rodeo. And he did good. He rode 8 seconds. I think he came in third that year. This next guy is EJ. And I don't know the women. I went to go take his picture, and I've taken his photo many times. But as soon as I went to snap the shutter, these 3 women just came up and were like, "We want to be in the photo." And it was just like really fun. He's married, so he told me to delete the photo. But I didn't. I just love it too much. I didn't. I said I wasn't going to post it on social media and tag him in it, but I'm going to keep it. And then this is Luch's. And I think this is the first photo that I ever took of Luch's. And I just like love his expression. I love his face. He, like a lot of like people over 50, don't really mind getting their photo taken so much, because they grew up like in an era where there wasn't social media. So like usually when I take pictures of these old men, they're just like, "Whatever you're doing, I don't care." And I can just like get like all the way up in their face, and it's like no problem. Where like the younger people are like, "Where is this going? What are you doing?" They have a lot of questions. Lucius is on the same riding team, the Chakota Rough Riders, as that man in the back. And I've got pictures of him in the parade. I've got pictures of him in his full regalia. I take his photo like every year. So yeah, that's what I got. We doing questions? Yeah, does anybody have a question?
Questions, please.
Or not, that's fine.
Where are the clowns?
The clowns? There's really one clown that does most of the black rodeos. His name is Avery Spanky Ford. I've got several photos of him, but they're just not in this show. I think he's in the book though. Yeah, he's in the book twice. Once he's putting on his makeup, and then the other one that I've got of him, he's got like a giant like brick phone, an inflatable brick phone, and he's dressed like a pimp, and it's like ridiculous. That got in the book somehow. Yeah.
I had a question about in a lot of the photos, the subject, there's like a lot of shadow, and I was wondering if that's like a conscious choice, or it's just like, oh, I'm just using available light, so it's
Yeah.
roll with it. Okay.
Yeah, it's basically, I use the sun and everything, because I you know, a lot of these folks aren't used to having their photo taken, and I see other photographers and they roll in with reflectors and bounce cards and lights and a giant camera, and I mean the photos are beautiful, but the subject is like, you know, like get out of my face. So I shoot most of these, you can tell the difference. Some of them I shoot with the medium format Fuji. If they're a little bit taller, that one in Milan I shot with a small Fuji XE1. You know, the file is so small, it's really hard to even get that size. But yeah, it's all available light that I'm working with, and sometimes I'm shooting at noon and it's very harsh. So just kind of roll with what you got. I don't focus so much on technique as much as like the moment and the interaction with the subject. Yeah.
So you shoot a lot of candid shots,
Everything I shoot is on a Fuji.
or candid shots.
Candid shots, yeah. Everything I shoot is,
That,
yeah.
you don't sit there and get all prepared.
No.
Well, he starts interacting with them though.
It does interact.
Yeah.
Candid in the sense of sneaky.
Yeah, it's not like street photography, which I have done. But, you know, it's people really doing what they're doing. I'm not like putting a model on a horse or anything like that. It's real people about to do what they're doing, and I just sort of insert myself into a moment, engage with them, get them comfortable, and then take the photo.
Are you planning on, like, did you shoot last year during your own rodeo, or are you planning to, do you just, like, you're just, you know, busy with so much else that you don't do it at your own?
So there are a couple of things going on in my own rodeo. One, I don't like the lighting at my rodeo because it's indoor. I don't like to shoot indoor rodeos. It's not my thing. I like to shoot outside. And then two, I've always wanted to be an announcer, and this is my big shot. This is my big moment in the sunlight. So last year I announced the rodeo. I'll be doing it again this year. Last year I did a horrible job, but this year I have a co-announcer who does it all the time. I'm gonna have a camera on me this year, and I'm gonna take a couple of shots, but you know, nobody else is gonna let me announce a rodeo, so I'm gonna do my own. Yeah.
You did a great job.
Oh, thank you. I've been practicing for years. There's a announcer named Marcus Friday who does all the black rodeos, and he's funny. He knows the sports. He's fluid, but he also is in charge. He's like an authority figure, and he's like, "Hey, y'all over there, y'all need to get off the fence. Hey, cowboy in those chutes, if you're too scared to ride that bull, get on out of there." You know, and he just has this command and this authority, but also a humor, that I was like, that's who I want to be. I want to be Marcus Friday when I'm, you know, he's like 80 and he just crushes every single time. So that's my big inspiration in the rodeo world.
I started noticing your account during COVID, and for the longest time I thought it was based out of Houston because I thought there were tags saying, you know, location-wise, and everything you were telling just now was tracks with about that time.
Yeah.
But I was always curious, like if you had plans, or maybe it's already been done and I don't even know about it, but for like a documentary about it, to all this stuff going on in your journey, maybe not just your personal journey, but like just what you see in these rodeos and, you know, black rodeo experience, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, possibly. I like video. I'm not particularly good at it. And also, like, with all of these shots, it was just like me and the subject. I did a short film in March, and there were like 30 people there. And it's very much like a team sport. And it's just a very different way to go about creating. So it's something I'm curious about. With the pandemic, I was just talking about this the other day. Everything I shot was in Houston because I was like on a COVID vacation, because like Portland was like locked down. Like you couldn't eat anywhere. You couldn't, people were jogging in N95. But you went to Houston, and it was like nothing was happening. it was like, oh, I was eating at a Chili's, like, and nobody had on a mask. And so I would fly down there on a plane, like by myself, and then go shoot rodeos down in Houston. So I cheated, and it was really dangerous. But also, like, as far as like brand work goes, like no other photographers were working. I was like, I'll do it. Yeah, I would take hazard pay, and so I was on the road during COVID, undercutting people. There's a documentary coming out about the culture by Monkey Paw, Jordan Peele's thing, and I might get involved with that one. They called me, so we'll see.
Did you happen to, when you were in Houston, did you happen to meet Early Hugnall?
No.
The black photographer down there is really good.
No.
of a certain age. He's been
Yeah,
photographing Hugh Tanisha for
Yeah.
Long time.
many and many the year. Yeah, I'll bet he would love to see what you're doing.
Yeah, I'll look him up. Early.
Early Hudnall.
Yeah.
H-U-D.
GBNAL.
Hudnall.
Yeah, he's great.
Cool. Well,
Well, I have like, I know people hate these statement questions, but I think this is so amazing, and I love hearing your stories about these people as much as I love looking at the photographs, and I think you have such a wonderful way of storytelling that's like wide and grounded, but also funny. And I still have to get into the most recent book, but like, I guess what my statement question is I think you're just as important as these photographs, and your journey and is so exciting and folk hero-like. And I don't know what it would mean to be able to hear more of your stories of these people, but I think it's important. And maybe that, I don't know if that's a question or not, but I hope like even just being able to hear about this man, and it changes your experience of it. And I'm just here to affirm that you in this story is just as important, and I love everything.
thank you. Yeah, much appreciated. I think I might write a real book. I mean, not that a photo book's not a real book, but I might like write. I used to like have a website with all of the stories, and I was like, oh, we went, I would just say what happened. I would go somewhere and then I'd come back and it was a historical flood, and it rained 4 inches in an hour, and we were at a practice pen, and Scrawny Brooks said, I'm not gonna miss out on this boot barn money, and he got in the pen and rode a bull in the mud, and I would just sort of like tell these stories about these cowboys and their grit and my experience with them. And I had compiled about 20 stories on the website. And I still have them, but I took the website down because I was finding out that teachers were using the stories as curriculum to teach about this. And I was like, whoa, this is just me yip-yapping, and I don't even know if this hasn't been like fact checked, I just felt weird about it. I had encountered like 5 teachers who were using the website as curriculum, and I was like, this needs to be a little bit more formalized if this is being taught to the kids. It can't just be like me being like, I might get somebody's grandma's name wrong or something like that. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about it, but I do have a lot of stories, and I think those stories need to be documented in a formal way with like a fact checker and a researcher and all of that stuff. But thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. My last response to that, those stories are so important because so much of it is oral history, and the energy of how we speak and the cadence and the rhythm is so integral. And I got to even just thinking about George Fletcher here in Oregon, and getting to meet a black cowboy down in Pendleton, Leon Ransom, who actually knew him when he was a child. And we don't have as many photographs of him, but him being able to tell me stories about him, it's just so vital. So yes.
I think also in response to that, I think it's great, we are planning to have another talk. We talked about we haven't set the date of it yet, but, you did, 26th?
The 26th,
Right.
yeah.
So Wednesday, June 26th on Zoom, we are planning to have a Cowboys in Conversation. One of the things that I and I talked about when we first started the show is you never get to hear from the subjects in the photos, and that would be really great. We're originally trying to get some cowboys out for the rodeo and be here, but it's just easier to do it on Zoom. So we're gonna have a Zoom conversation. We'll put that out. We just set the date apparently today, so that's great.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, and there'll be more of those conversations where we get to hear from the subjects in science photos and job storytelling in your photos that I'm looking forward to having those conversations, those real conversations like you're saying, hearing your voice, and yeah, it's going to be great. So I hope you all join us Wednesday the 26th. Time?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock on Zoom.
Yeah, just to build on what Intisar said, I mean, those stories are important. Not only you're telling of them, but as you said, do some oral histories maybe with these people. And, hey, let me just record you on the phone and you tell me something, you know.
Yeah.
But then also, I heard Intisar saying, which I very agree with, that your story was really powerful and interesting.
Thank you.
It's not just their stories; it's your story. And,
Yeah.
and growing up in this world where you were in blinders like the horse, you
Yeah.
couldn't see. You know?
Yeah.
And to open your eyes and to get this thing, and it's similar to what McClellan was saying. You know, it's like he's gay, and oh, you're African, you're not allowed to be gay. There's no African gay people. It's like, wait a minute, that's not true. You know? There's no black cowboys. That's not true.
Sure.
You know? So I think the one of the reasons that your talk is so powerful is that you're bringing in, okay, how did this change my life? And then for us as the audience, that's really a powerful story.
Yeah. Thank you. Much appreciated. Yeah, what's up?
How's your relationship with the outdoors changed during this journey?
I've gotten a lot more comfortable. How's my relationship with the outdoors changed? I've gotten a lot more comfortable around horses. I can ride a horse, which I really couldn't do. We would, as kids, go after church sometimes to a place called Benjamin Ranch, and we would ride ponies, and that in our church clothes. And that was the only experience I had riding a horse. But now I'm pretty comfortable on basically any horse. Usually they put me on a Clydesdale because I'm so big. So I'm like, you know, way up here. It's a long way down. I was scared of horses when I first started, and then I was scared of them, and then they would feel that, and then they would start acting weird. I got my foot stepped on by a horse. My foot was broken for like a year because I never went to the doctor because it's a whole nother thing. yeah, it hurt like hell, and it got better, but every morning I would wake up and my foot was like swollen. It was terrible, but. You know, I don't pretend to be like these guys, kind of cowboy. I'm a different kind of cowboy. I'm using my gifts as a promoter and a marketer and a designer to elevate and promote the culture. And the cowboys started coming to me, and they were like, I used to wear like a fitted. And they were like, I used to wear like a ball cap, and they were like, why don't you wear a cowboy hat? And I was like, cause I'm not a cowboy. And they were like, number one, you are. You're as cowboy as everybody else here because of what you're doing for the culture and how you go about living your life, the principles that you live your life, the ethical way that you live your life, how you follow through on what you're doing. But they were like, also like tactically, you're at rodeos all the time, and you're up there in a Kansas City Royals hat. That's disrespectful. You really need to start wearing a cowboy hat if you're going to be in cowboy spaces. And you need to wear the jeans, and you need to, you know, wear like a long sleeve shirt. And so it was kind of like, for me, like, this is my job, this is my uniform, you know, that I have to wear for that job. So like, I'm not on the range. I can rope a little bit. I'm not like Margie or Luchas or any of these people that kind of are really strong and powerful in the outdoors, but I have a place in the community and it's valid. Yeah.
I'm so curious about this idea of a uniform. You spoke earlier and also at Powell's about how you got into this ad agency space and felt like the way to blend in was, you know, chinos, polo shirt, whatever the case is. And then it seems to me like, you know, this experience kind of opened a door to escape a little bit from that expectation. And I might be projecting here, so correct me. But then you just mentioned about sort of now moving to this other uniform. And I wonder if there's something putting something on.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, what feels most real to you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, just like how I grew up, like in the church, grew up around grandma, like presenting yourself to the world in a very specific way was like critically important. You know, your pants slacks had to be creased, your shirt had to be ironed, your hair had to be cut, you know, everything had to be presented in a certain way because you didn't want your dress and your presentation to be a barrier or a way that people judged you before you even open your mouth. So I've always been very concerned and cautious about the way that I dress. And then I talked about it a little bit, but I spent a lot of time as an actor. And so the costume really matters. You know, I would come into the theater. I did some Shakespeare. I did a lot of stuff other than the hippo. I played Oberon. Like I played Othello. But I would come into the theater and I would start from the socks out. You know, when I got dressed, I wouldn't wear anything that belonged to me because I was coming in to play somebody else. And so costume, presentation, all of that in clothes and dress is really, really important to me. And it's really important to these folks. Like I said, most of them are wearing like dry fit, they're wearing Nike, they're dressed very casually until it's rodeo time. And then like, it's a completely different thing. They are presented as cowboys. A lot of them, when I post a photo like this guy with no shirt on, they're like, Ivan, you're representing the culture poorly. That's not how we want to be seen. But I'm like, but that's who you are. And you're also that. And so, yeah, the dress is very complicated. It's very cultural. Liberating, I wouldn't say so. It's still about, I'm doing cowboy stuff, so I need to present myself as a cowboy. Because I don't want anyone, I don't want there to be any confusion about who I am and what I'm doing at any given moment. But it is very much like I view it a uniform of the job that I'm doing.
It's like a signifier.
Yeah, it's a signal.
Yeah.
So,
It reduces friction.
yeah, it reduces friction. I think in rodeo spaces, it's about respect. In spaces like this, it's about, identification and simplification. But it's like, I'm on video, I'm representing the culture, I need to look a certain way,
Just carrying a camera, visibly carrying a camera amongst these people, does it affect that? In a way, you're talking about a way of not camouflaging, but there's sort of integrating, but when you have a camera, does that help sort of position you outside of as a spectator before you?
At this point, no, because people know who I am. I walk into that rodeo in Okmulgee now, and like, people are asking me to take their photo, because they know exactly who I am, and other photographers know who I am, and it's almost difficult to be in that space now because there's no like kind of sense of discovery. People are either like, take my photos, or can I compete in the rodeo next year, or I'm like very known. But when I first went to that first rodeo, people were like, we've never seen a photographer here, what are you doing here? There was a lot of curiosity about what I was doing. And when I started going in those spaces more, I would keep the camera in the car for like the first like few hours that I was there. And I would just talk to people, get to know them a little bit. And then I would come back around with the camera and ask to take their picture. Because it was a bit of a barrier. And it did feel like I was taking. But now it's very different. It's almost like the photography is performative at this point, because people know the weight of it, and they know they know that it's going to be distributed wide when I show up.